What a surprise. Another tone-based video about Rock 3.
Rock 4?
The first time I ever heard these opening chords of Rock 4, ascending valiantly over the turmoil on the brass, I thought, okay, this rocks. But I did think, what is the climax doing at the beginning of the piece?
Fourth Concerto, oddly enough, starts with an evocation of the end of the third. Starts in the same key, and then the piano commandingly comes in, sounding like the ends of the second and third concertos with a big chorale theme.
But it was just a daydream of a youthful Rachmaninoff climax, composed by a middle-aged father and husband who had just been flung halfway around the world from his homeland. A ghost in a world-grown alien, tired and a touch jaded, and so again, the music grows weary.
He goes on to other things.
The next thing you know, we're in an opium den. What happened to Rachmaninoff? This is making my head spin. A few years later, my college piano teacher, Bobby Rue, assigned me, of all pieces, Rock 4. I picked up Michelangelo's classic recording, and in it, I found this searing intensity that just captivated me. So naturally, I did everything I could to sound like him.
It's wonderful, and I love it very much, but it's darker, it's a bit more morbid, and people didn't like it as much, which disappointed him. And the second theme is not one of his gorgeous songs without words.
Indeed, like the critics, I was listening to Rock 4 with Rock 2 or Rock 3 ears. Where was the sweeping romantic second theme? This music seemed to be in some kind of identity crisis. But the more I listened and the more I practiced, the more the music began to make sense. It was like, with enough patience, this elder, wiser Rachmaninoff will start whispering to you his secrets. The concerto was dedicated to Nikolai Medtner, appropriately so since Medtner's music also has experienced a similar unfair neglect over the past century. Rachmaninoff began sketches for his Fourth Concerto in 1914, the year World War I began. But he put it and everything else on hold in 1917, leaving Russia in the wake of the Bolshevik Revolution. And it was once he was settled in America in the 1920s that he finally finished the first version of the concerto in the mid-20s, immersed in a modern urban environment at the dawn of the Jazz Age. While the concerto showcases some of this new urban sound, Rachmaninoff is continuing to develop a distinctive chromaticism using terse, motivically driven forms he'd already begun exploring a decade earlier in his Etude Tableau, just now tinged with even more pain and homesickness. Yet, there are moments of sheer beauty where the dark clouds part and glimpses of the warm sun of the early romantic Rachmaninoff shine through.
Fourth Concerto, the moment which reminds us on that Rachmaninoff who wrote beautiful romantic music as well in D flat.
Even while these dark spirits loom large in the finale, you hear a man struggling for transcendence, which throughout Opus 40 always escapes his reach. And I think this helps explain why in Rock 4 you never quite get that victorious climax that was so easily accessed in the earlier concertos. This undercurrent of disappointment with the world around him runs throughout the concerto, while the music strives for salvation. At the end of the second movement, Rachmaninoff reappropriates material from an etude he had discarded a decade earlier.
There's a etude tableau which for me is certainly, I would call the Tod und Verklärung, death and transfiguration. This is the second part of the transfiguration, actually the same keys as Richard Strauss' poem. Unbelievable. He decided not to publish this one.
That piece culminates with the section that he uses in the fourth concerto, the second movement, which is such
because actually he was sure that nobody in the world will hear this music, because next section just before I stop is one of the greatest moments of fourth concerto, ending of second movement.
While it's often said that the fourth is the least Rachmaninoff sounding of his concertos, it might in fact be the most authentic expression of the composer's personal journey and spiritual identity. And for that reason alone, it deserves to be heard. Once you connect with it, it only gets better with age. Taking Lugansky's cue, we might interpret the second movement poetically as Rachmaninoff's own spiritual death and transfiguration as an artist. Then the world reasserts itself, and the music turns on a dime to a devilish dance at the beginning of the third movement. I can safely say at this point in my life, and especially with Rachmaninoff's 150th winding down, that I'd rather hear Rock 4 1,000 times before I hear another Rock 2 or Rock 3. Now in a moment, I'm going to hand things over to one of the great Rachmaninoff interpreters of my millennial generation, Boris Giltburg, who joined me at Tonebase Studios in Pasadena this past summer, just a few neighborhoods away from where Rachmaninoff himself took his last breath. We spent an afternoon filming a series that explores all of Rachmaninoff's concertos, and he was even kind enough to school me on some of the nastier passages of Rock 2. It's much more anchored that way.
Then you're getting back to your old tempo immediately. Your hands spend a lot of time in the air. In a passage like this, we don't have a microsecond to lose.
It's a beautiful and, I think, profound series of videos, as is the one that I filmed with Nikolai Lugansky, also this past summer, on Rachmaninoff's style and symbolism, featuring some exclusive performances of favorite Rachmaninoff preludes and etudes. And believe it or not, this is just the tip of the iceberg of the Rachmaninoff content in the tonebase library. There you'll find endless hours of Rachmaninoff tutorials, interviews, performances, courses with several world-renowned pianists. And right now you can access all of this for 30% off as part of our Rachmaninoff holiday sale. Just follow that link right there or check the description, and you're only a few clicks away. Tonebase piano subscriptions make awesome and unique gifts, and hey, why not celebrate the last month of Rachmaninoff's 150th in style? With that, over to Boris and me.
Perhaps the only opening to a rock concerto that can rival the first one is the fourth one in terms of the very opening, beginning with a kind of...
I love it. I love it, love it, love it.
It actually begins almost, feels like you're in the middle of it, with a kind of climactic, chordal, typical Rachmaninoff thing. It feels like this could really draw your average audience in.
So I think something that can almost serve as an indicator of what's popular or what's not is how we reacted to certain works as kids. And I think you and I discussed it, that when we had this immediate impact or connection with number 2, and number 3 took a much longer to arrive.
But 3 is hugely popular now, right?
It is, but I think it took Horowitz championing it, Shine,
And also Clyburn playing
it, and many others. So we need more. I mean, it is getting more champions, and it's definitely played more. At least if I judge by myself, it's asked for much more than it used to be. But sorry, what I was going to say was that when I listened to this as a kid, the only 2 bits I liked or understood from the entire concerto were the theme, which I thought, oh, this is amazing. Then I had no idea what was happening.
And then when the theme comes back.
And then, not when the theme comes back,
okay.
but this little cute corner here.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just so satisfying. Those were the only 2 parts of the concerto that as a kid I could relate to. So maybe, as you said, this does draw the way it sounds, but then he goes on to a very different journey, and it's a kind of journey which I learned to appreciate a lot.
Well, let's hear
later.
The beginning of this. It's like it runs out of gas, and then it
picks up again.
But in general, I find in the fourth, there's often moments, this included, where it feels like we're in the second or the third concerto and it's sending us to a great climax, and then there's something that deflates it or it disturbs it. And actually the main climax of this first movement has a similar kind of, oh my gosh, it's building like it's rock 2, but then we get this really...
But we do get... So, a few things, a few thoughts. First, again, the version at least that I'm playing is the second revision, so the third version. There was a 1926 version, which was a complete fiasco when Rachmaninoff performed it. Then he revised it before publication, 28, and then second, even bigger revision in 41, and then he recorded that version. And he still kept tinkering with it, so there's one little insert for woodwinds in the finale, which only exists on the recording, which never got to any score. So, of course, we greedy pianists, we copied it from the recording and we play it now. I mean, it's for the woodwinds, so we don't play it, but the woodwinds play it. And he kept saying that he wanted to reorchestrate it yet again. Because of the very large amount of cuts, the form that we have in the final version is really unusual. And for me, personally, this concerto is much more a rhapsody than the Rhapsody, which is actually very strictly structured.
3 movements.
3 movements, very clear, almost classically delineated. Here, for me, the experience of both playing and listening to it is almost simultaneous with the experience of discovering where we are in the piece. So we can't use our usual orienting marks of the sonata form to help us. So there's a sense of this being not, if not improvised on the spot, but definitely a much larger freedom than we have in any of his other concerti. But he did help unite things, and one of the things which help is the 2 climaxes in the first movement and in the finale, which like two towering peaks talk to each other. Exactly. So there is a big build-up. And then the melody rises. The same music repeated just before the coda of the finale. That is a climax.
It's structurally significant, but as someone who, when I first heard this, was addicted to rock too, I was just waiting in that precise moment for something like this, because it feels like it's coming, and yet there's something
so it goes
like I said,
completely
disturbing, internal, this turmoil, this dissatisfaction, this almost suicidal kind of energy to this piece. At first, I was just, that's what threw me off. It didn't have the kind of arrival, so this kind of optimistic arrival I think that Rock 2 has so many times.
Yes, I agree, but can I slightly challenge, because this is exactly the criticism that was thrown.
Oh, I'm not criticizing. I'm saying this is why it was harder for me to understand it at first.
That I agree. But he was criticized for number 2 because it was too popular.
Yeah.
So he was like the composer of the popular pieces, which is bad for whatever reason. But then this was criticized for not being like Rachmaninoff 2 enough.
He couldn't win.
So he couldn't win, and it was also not modern enough at the same time. So like nothing he did was good enough for those.
Which is wild, because
critics.
it seems to infuse like some jazz elements, and there's a lot of almost Stravinskyan type of angular kinds of harmonies, and I don't know. It seems pretty modern to me.
It is modern. I mean, much more in this form than I have to admit. The first version has a lot of passages that I think he did very well by cutting. That's my opinion. I find the last version so tautly constructed, so concise in its rhapsodic freedom. Like there's really not an ounce of fat remaining. But it does mean that certain sections come out of nowhere because, for example, they come in the reprise because the section in the exposition was just cut.
Yeah.
So for us it seems like a new material all of a sudden, and we don't know where it came from. But I read an interesting interpretation of this entire first movement, in that the first theme is like a shock, and the entire remainder of the movement is the reverberations and the reactions felt to this shock to the system. And then what I find very beautiful is that in the reprise, where he reverses the order of the theme, so first the second theme, then the bridge, and then finally this.
With the beautiful arpeggios.
So the violins played, and we just.
For me, this was a moment that connected to me immediately the way the second and the third did. It was just like, wow, that is ravishingly beautiful.
And that's also a sense of a kind of unquenchable nostalgia, which, of course, one is tempted to say this is the nostalgia he felt towards Russia, but we do not know. But it is some kind of something which cannot be assuaged.
Let's take a look at the second theme. This is not the second theme of the second or third concerto. This is not some romantic, swooning.
It's not even singable, not quiet, but it is very beautiful. There's a duo. And I personally find this maybe
so beautiful.
This is very satisfying.
It is.
Just melting. And of course, we should say that this is the accompaniment or the counterpoint to what the celli are playing.
But there is something, a glimmer of hope in this otherwise very, very dark piece here. And even the theme is so mysterious and exotic, but then it kind of opens up here in a way that's almost like some of the earlier pieces.
It's just something which, because you also mentioned a suicidal energy. I must admit, I don't quite feel it in the same way. As I said, I feel a lot of nostalgia, maybe some heartache, but I always experience, like even in the darkest moments, I've experienced Rachmaninoff. I never really experienced him as bleak, or there are a few exceptions, like in the B minor prelude, like this is bleak. This is a post-apocalyptic landscape. But that's rather an exception which comes to mind, because for me, even something as dark as the Isle of the Dead, which is extremely dark, but it's still warm-hearted. It's never like Shostakovich can be, that could be really suicidal.
Yeah.
Or Schnittke even more. For me, he's closer to Beethoven in that sense of there is a sense of life permeating his music, which is one of the reasons why I love playing him so much. So he gives energy back. He never drains energy in the way that Shostakovich can.
So even though death is always on his mind.
Death is always on his mind with a
there's
dies irae.
There's something life-affirming, yes, of course. There's still something life-affirming in...
For me.
And certainly this piece, at the end of the second movement, we'll look at it, but you get to the last movement and it is a kind of devil's dance of sorts.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's just maybe not so much what the music is, but rather how I personally react to it. So I never, for example, my mom who is a very critical listener, she says that for her, the heartbreak she feels immediately when she listens to Rachmaninoff sometimes can be just too much. Yeah. But I don't think I personally experienced it this way.
I think I'm with you. I like dark movies. I like things that explore this side of the human condition. And so for me, it is extremely beautiful and not overwhelming at all. It's like I need more. I can't get enough of it somehow.
Can I give you a very dark example from Rachmaninoff?
Yes.
But even that's something I like. Is the Red Riding Hood etude?
Yes.
So he called it the Red Riding Hood in a letter to Respighi. Yes. So, but it's kind of we can see there's the growls of the wolf, and then Red Riding Hood, kind of running away, and the first sign that something is not quite right is that it ends with the wolf. So we think probably that it ends again with that probably the wolf.
She got eaten.
Yes, but it gets worse. In the middle section, there's a kind of demonic hunt, which in my mind was always that it's the wolf hunting Red Riding Hood. But listen to how it starts. There are three of them, so it's one, second, and third. But this is Red Riding Hood. So she's being hunted by three doppelgangers, twisted versions of herself,
My God.
who then in the end eat her, or she becomes them, whatever. But that is dark. That's a really dark imagination.
Only in music are you allowed to depict this sort of thing. You couldn't create a film about this.
So sorry for that side.
No.
But even that I personally find exciting rather than
Absolutely.
than
And
depressing.
before I knew about the program, I was never thinking about little girls being eaten by wolves. So,
Yeah,
it was
or
just
by
exciting to-
doppelgangers, yeah.
Who did not know Rachmaninoff intimately, did not know him at all. Behind an austere, perhaps even severe countenance, there was a most warm-hearted, lovable man with a wonderful sense of humor. Yes, a wonderful sense of humor. Rachmaninoff thoroughly enjoyed a good story, and no one who hasn't seen him laugh with the tears running down his cheeks would believe it possible.